your screen is now showing you and them.
Perfect. That's what we want.
Oh, we're streaming through this little machine.
We are. We're streaming audio and video through there today.
Okay. And I'm ready when you are.
Okay, this is the budget subcommittee meeting. Could you call the roll, please? Secretary? Montoya?
Yes. Board Member Bartholow is absent. Vice Chair Noni
Here.
and Chair Wright.
Here.
All right, let the record reflect that all subcommittee members are present with the exception of Board Member Bartholow.
Okay. No remote participation is not needed for this meeting. And now we are taking public comments. We are now taking public comments on item 3. Public comment, if you are in the room, please move to the microphone and wait for the timer to appear on the screen. Seeing no one, we'll move on to new business. Director Burke, could you introduce item 4.1?
Sure, thank you, Chair Wright and members of the subcommittee. Item 4.1 will be our fiscal year 25-26 budget overview, and Nick Harvey, our Deputy Director of Water Administration, will be presenting. Give us 1 second, and we're dealing with some AV issues.
Hey, good afternoon, Chair Wright and subcommittee members. Nick Harvey, Deputy Director, Administration. I'll try and project my voice because we don't have AV today, so please let me know if I need to speak up. So we're here to give you a brief overview of the fiscal year 2025-26 budget and some high-level assumptions and review some of the regulatory and compliance work around our funds. We like to refresh you on that every year. Oh, maybe clickers in slideshow. Thank you. So we're going to start off today by doing a quick overview of all 4 of our water department enterprises. So our water enterprise is funded by a combination of rate revenues and demand, miscellaneous, and other fees. For the year ended June 30th, 2024, the water fund brought in approximately $47.3 million in rate revenues from approximately 54,000 customer accounts. Our water rates consist of fixed and usage aspects with 2 tiers for single family accounts, or as you know them, or as we commonly refer to them as indoor and outdoor water usage. And we generated $12.2 million in demand and miscellaneous fees for the year. The local sewer enterprise generated $72.1 million in rate revenues across 50,000 customer accounts. Sewer rates also consist of fixed and usage components billed at a single tier with some variability based on the strength of discharge on our commercial accounts. The local sewer enterprise generated $16.9 million in demand, miscellaneous, and other charges for the year. So the regional enterprise consists of Santa Rosa and our 4 regional partner agencies, those being Rohnert Park, Cotati, Sebastopol, and the South Park County Sanitation District. Operating costs are allocated to the partners on an annual basis based on prorated flows into the plant. CIP is distributed based on a percentage set forth in the sub-regional agreement, and debt service is allocated depending on the benefit derived for each agency and is unique to each debt issuance. For Stormwater and Creeks Enterprise was created in 1996 to comply with MPDES permit requirements and to address several concerns in the city related to wet weather events. This enterprise is funded by an annual parcel, or this enterprise generates revenues by way of an annual parcel assessment and is funded by a combination of enterprise revenues, the general fund, and special revenue funds to support the enterprise's CIP program. So a large component of the Stormwater and Creeks Enterprise's annual expenditure budget is to fund programs related to regulatory compliance, with the city's special revenue funds being used to supplement their CIP appropriations. 47% of revenues generated by the enterprise are used annually to fund stormwater, with the remaining 53% of funding creeks each year. The stormwater assessment is placed on the Sonoma County property tax rolls each year and is based on the number of equivalent residential units on a given parcel. For fiscal year 2024-25, or the year we're currently in, all ERUs were assessed at $41.34. And for 2025-26, parcels will be assessed $42.46 per equivalent residential unit. The annual assessment is calculated each year and is increased by the Bay Area Consumer Price Index. So all of Santa Rosa Water's enterprises are governed by California Prop 218. This means that funds between enterprises cannot be commingled, cannot be used to subsidize customers and rates must be approved through a public hearing process. Rates must also have a nexus with the cost of providing services. Regional enterprise is also governed by the sub-regional agreement, which I referenced earlier, with Santa Rosa's portion being funded each year by sewer rates. On the stormwater and creek side, a vote would be required to increase the annual assessment beyond the CPI increase. And just a quick reminder, we talked about not subsidizing customers. Just wanted to remind you all that our Hope to Others program that provides fixed subsidies for the fixed portion of qualifying customers' bills, that is not breaking the requirements of Prop 218, because we have a dedicated revenue stream, cell tower lease revenues, which we dedicate to that purpose.
So if stormwater and creeks are funded by the same fund, it is called stormwater assessment. How come creeks get 40%?
I can, through the chair, if it's okay, I can answer that. When the assessment was put out back in the mid-90s, and someone else can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what was proposed with the assessment, and the only way that my understanding is the only way that when they were putting it out to see what the public would support, the only way they would be willing to support an assessment if there was a big component that supported creeks. So this is the way it went out to the voters, and that's how they voted on the assessment.
It's an assessment. Did it go to the voters? Assessments don't usually go to the voters.
It's a property related fee, and it's my understanding that all property related fees are subject.
Like a week before 218, and the city council approved it. In my mind, creeks are part of the stormwater system. All stormwater drained to the creek in Santa Rosa. So
the reason I ask the question is because we don't have enough money to fund necessary infrastructure for doing the stormwater portion of our mission, and I don't know how we're going to solve that. So I'm just looking for, why we're using the money we do have and when we're using it in that area.
Part of the issue, it was always understood that they would also be supported by the general fund. in particular for capital investment and infrastructure maintenance. And that piece has been dwindled. So we have had discussions internally about trying to see if there might be additional opportunities. You may have heard and we may have talked about before that there is the possibility that a stormwater utility could do a rate under Prop 218, but all of us are very concerned about doing that because we've been told that whoever goes first is going to be sued. So, so we're also looking at, could we potentially look at other options, like an additional assessment? We don't want to lose the current assessment. We don't want to lose that funding. But could we look at other opportunities? So we're definitely exploring that, but for now, if you're right, it is not enough. It's not enough for both pieces, but the only way it would be supported is that it has to have that calculated increase minimum.
So I guess at some point we will reach a tipping point. I mean, the risk of getting sued versus the deterioration of infrastructure. And at some point in time, the cost of the risk will be justified by the need to, maintain infrastructure.
Or somebody else will go first and then we'll be dead.
So it's a waiting game. It's a waiting game. Who's going to play chicken? So, okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So quick review, the total annual budget for our water enterprises in the current fiscal year, 24-25. Our budget for this year is approximately $156 million for our core enterprises, consisting of $104 million in O&M, $24 million in CIP appropriations, and $28 million in debt service costs, with the majority of that debt service residing in the regional enterprise. Stormwater and Creeks budget for the current year amounts to $4.8 million, consisting of $3.1 million in operations and maintenance and $1.7 million in CIP appropriations, with half of the CIP appropriations being funded by special revenue funds. So here's a look at the current fiscal year operations and maintenance budget distributed by category. Our personnel costs and wholesale water purchases from Sonoma Water continue to be our largest expenditure categories. And a quick note on this, you'll notice that this total does not match the total I showed a couple slides ago. The reason for that is we have our utility impact fund expenditures on this slide, which weren't included on the other. Okay, so I'll be doing a high-level preliminary budget overview for 25-26 today. We'll start by discussing some assumptions and anticipated changes in revenues and finish with a planned CIP funding and review our budget schedule. Per Finance Department guidance, we're budgeting for 9% salary increases across the board. This is to account for the July 1, 2025 MOU increases of 4%, as well as a maximum 5% equity increases resulting from the class and compensation study. So as a conservative measure, the budget team downtown has automatically built in a 9% cost. But we are seeing some spikes in property and liability insurance. This is a set allocation from risk and is neither controllable nor adjustable, unfortunately. And electricity will be increasing based on PG&E rate increase assumptions, as well as the expectation for higher electricity consumption in the water fund, based on the expectation that the well at a Place to Play park may be coming online next year and increasing our overall power demand. And we have some sharp increases in the software as a service line item in our funds. This has more to do with the realignment of several departmental software contracts to this line item rather than true price increases. In the past, a lot of our software contracts were hitting professional services or operational supplies, and working with my staff, we've kind of drilled into those contracts and are now budgeting the true software costs in software as a service and as distinct from professional services. So they're not necessarily, when we get to the point we start seeing percentage increases, our costs aren't really increasing to that extent. It has more to do with how we're budgeting going forward. So our revenue assumptions for 25-26 include our 1.1% growth assumption, consistent with the financial modeling done as part of our rate setting process. We expect development to remain stable and have seen interest earnings come in above budget, so we've increased the budget in those line items accordingly. And at our public hearing on April 1st, we will be recommending 3 years of 6% rate increases, followed by 2 years of 7% for the water enterprise, and 5 years of 5% increases for the sewer enterprise. And I just wanted to point out that our proposal increases both fixed and usage rates for this cycle. The two main factors affecting our water purchase budget are water delivery volumes and changes to the Sonoma Water wholesale water rate. The tentative Sonoma Water rate increase for the Santa Rosa Aqueduct is 8.68%, as presented in our report item at last week's board meeting and recommended by the board to City Council. And based on this tentative increase, we expect our water purchase budget to come in at about $21.6 million, or 1.9%, or sorry, a $1.9 million increase over the budget for the current fiscal year. Our water revenues are estimated to increase a bit due to higher anticipated delivery volumes and planned rate increases. Our sewer revenues are expected to increase based on a 5% rate increase in our growth assumptions. Sewer revenues do tend to be less volatile than water revenues due to the fact that we have sewer caps in place. We're expecting to continued growth in our truck waste revenues at the plant for next year, and we're also budgeting for higher interest earnings and miscellaneous fees. Working with the budget staff downtown, we realize we've been kind of selling ourselves short budgetarily on the interest earnings, so we've adjusted that upward next year. Here's a quick look at our reserve balances as of June 30, 2024. Finance just finished adjusting these balances a month or two ago. Operating, as you know, always stays at 15% of operations and maintenance costs. Catastrophic remains steady for several years now. And so what we're really looking at as a result of operations is a change in undesignated fund balance. So water, we added $470,000 to get our undesignated fund balance to just under 15.4 million. Wastewater, we added just over $1 million, bringing our undesignated to just over 14.7 million. And the regional enterprise, we generated $5.9 million of refund reserve, which totals 8.8 million now.
Excuse me, why
Yeah.
the kind of an amount for?
Oh, we don't. So we really talk about undesignated fund balance as kind of a temperature check. So if we're adding to fund balance, it means we either revenues were higher or expenses were lower, or a combination of the two that ended up having a budget that wasn't at a deficit. So
The ending result.
it's the ending result. So basically, we added to reserves this year, or last year rather, on this June 30, 2024. So it shows that we're budgeting responsibly.
My question is.
Yeah.
Undesignated reserves are always, problematic in that, it causes people to ask why we didn't use all the money that was budgeted. And when it starts accumulating from year to year and gets up into the range of 15, 14, $8 million, we got a lot of undesignated reserves. And
Yeah.
so did we allocate any of the undesignated reserves to the expenses we expect to incur next year?
Yes. So our financial modeling that we worked on with our consultant does provide for reasonable deficit budgeting to help manage that reserve balance in lieu of the rate increases.
Okay, so we'll see later on how much of our designated.
Yes, not in this presentation, but at the next meeting, I'll have more details for you guys on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know we're always trying to make sure we don't want to look like we're overestimating all the time.
Yeah.
We're accumulating a balance.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that is also driven by position budgeting. So City Hall budgets positions at 100% occupancy of positions, and we know that with the challenges as of late, we haven't been anywhere near full capacity in terms of staffing. So there's can be a significant amount of built-in wiggle room, for lack of a better term, just based on payroll. So.
Our recommendation on the catastrophic reserve, and for some of that investment fund out.
Yeah, so we had a study completed a few years ago. We hired a consultant to give recommendations on the increased catastrophic reserve, on possible increased catastrophic reserve balances, which, as you might imagine, after the 2017 fires, we wanted to take a look at. And so as part of our financial plan, and our new rates, or proposed rates for the next 5 years, we are planning to affect a catastrophic reserve policy change and increase those amounts to give us more resiliency, which would bring down the undesignated fund balances in each fund.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Moving the undesignated catastrophic sounds like a great idea.
So some good news. I'm sure you all remember last year we cut about $5 million from our water CIP appropriations and about almost $10 million from our sewer CIP appropriations in order to pass balanced budgets. With our with our rate proposals, they should allow for a return to full planned CIP appropriations for next year. Those being $15.5 million for water, $14.3 million for sewer, and we're continuing the $1 million per year cash funded CIP increase in the regional enterprise. And one more note on CIP as it pertains to the regional enterprise. The finance department, it's my understanding, is working on securing support contracts for executing the bond issuance that we want to issue to fund the electrical infrastructure replacement out at the plant. And so it looks like we'll be able to do that, at least get the ball rolling well before we get into 2026.
So if we're planning 12 million in regional CIP, and we're hoping that a portion of it comes from bonds.
No, it's separate and distinct from the 12 million.
Okay.
So this is the cash funded CIP. So this is what we ask the partners to contribute on a cash basis. And then we execute the bonds. We use the bond principal to execute projects. And that comes into the budget through debt service payments over the life of the debt. Yeah. And our budget schedule. So we'll be back before this group March 26th. We'll have the BPU O&M, CIP, and regional study session on April 3rd. Request your formal recommendation of the full budget to City Council on April 17th. City Council will hold its budget study sessions on May 6th and 7th, with the public hearing for budget adoption for June 17th. Happy to take any more questions you may have.
Oh, I have one. The utility impact that you mentioned briefly in one slide. So what's the status of that? What are the costs? You know, the escalators, what are we paying for the utility impact?
I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's in the neighborhood of, I want to say $2.5 million for water, for water and sewer. Yeah, and so there's a lot of things we escalate by CPI. There is a CPI escalator factor as part of the UIF calculation, but there's a bunch more math that goes into it on the back end to account for water, or money rather, that the water funds have already paid towards CIP projects.
So we're still getting, when we do a local project and we pave the streets, are we still getting credit?
We get credit based on the standard 215 trench detail, is my understanding.
Well, we typically overlay the entire streets and rebuild them and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You understand that? You may not.
Yeah, it's it's pretty complex. I don't remember all the details off the top of my head, but it's, yeah.
So I just pulled up our final amount. So we actually are, gonna have a slight increase, before credits are applied for this year. So we're at about 3 million apiece, both water and wastewater fund. And, we did, we've had a few issues with, CPI in the past, but it's lower this year. So when we take into account that initial amount minus the credit, we are actually going to see a reduction in our UIF costs this year in comparison to last year. So the credits for the maintenance fund. So we should see about 2.5 million for water and 2.4 million for wastewater. So I think this is the first year that it's actually gone down that I can recall. We held it static. Lori, do you want to talk more to that?
Yeah, I just want to add one little note on the UIF. We are looking at a different calculation theory that's based on, right now, wherever you paid out, it's all the same. Whether if we're putting underground and say that payment index is really low, we're still buying grand. And there's a different calculation where it takes that pavement degradation in consideration for the UIF. So we are looking at that. It continues to go up.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question.
I couldn't wait for mine, so I already asked.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
So, as Nick mentioned, we'll be coming back more detailed budget. We have managers who've done a very good job putting all their entries in. I think we are meeting with city manager on the CIP side later this week and then next week. And so we don't have all details quite yet to share with you because we've been getting some little different budget direction this year from the city manager than we have in previous years. So we just want to make sure we're all on the same page before we present it to the board. So we will get much more detailed budget presentations at our next meeting.
So you're looking be increasing staff or decreasing staff?
There's some staffing questions that are in there. There's some general understanding of direction and general fund impacts that may impact the stormwater piece. And so we're waiting to, we're hoping to get all that clarified in the next weeks before we see you next.
And when we don't use it from the prior year, we just sit there until we do use it for the project for which it was allocated.
Yes, it does, and then that's what we call them, the backlog.
Yeah.
And that's what plugs the day in.
Of course. So it causes me to then wonder, how close were we? I know we've been working our way towards trying to use our full allocation. How are we doing?
So we have some really good graphs that have been put together by our asking team, which is Emily here. Really trying to tease out where we are in terms of the CIP and determine that the good majority of that is either in design or construction. So we have a lot more detailed information that we can present to the board, and I think we will plan to do so when we bring this back. So it's really helping us get a better handle on where that budget is made up of, and as we continue to pursue with the GW director putting projects out to be managed by an outside consultant for project management, sort of how what that list makes sense to be, and what we would put out to have that extra capacity to move projects forward. So
did the RFP go out for the super consultant?
not quite yet. So we have been working on that. We've been working on a list of projects. And I think we need to have another meeting to just solidify how many of those projects we can do. Because I think we started a little bit earlier than this, and then once we've got this analysis move what would go from our project pool, sort of waiting for an engineer to pick up versus what's currently in design, and what status that's at. I think we're still looking somewhere in the $30 to $40 million list of the project that would go out. That would change.
Sort of going down, I think we'll get you out, next month. With that,
I think it'll definitely go out for the end of the school year. So,
I was right then at March, and now I'm really right.
okay, well, we will, I'll get in that, with the TDW director and see where we're at, but, I think we get to put it out for the end of the fiscal year, and the actual timeline for sure of the RFQ, and putting that out, but I'll check.
Background knowledge. Does the delay ever cause projects to fall off the list? And so that we decide not to do the projects? Or, and then can we allocate those funds? Or do they just stay there until that project gets done?
I don't know if the lawyer was, I don't know that any prices actually fall off of this, but there could be, I mean, there are some projects that have taken years to implement, and that's something to work on. But I don't know.
Okay.
Sometimes they change just a little bit depending on the project priority. And you've had some changes, taking money from one that's lower priority.
Change, we have to go back to council. We can
We'll do that.
We can make those shifts, but if we actually change the project, it would have to go back. That's my understanding. But the full on change, we can make adjustments. Well, there's still, we have some authority to do that.
Okay, let's see. So, any questions, comments for the committee members? We already did that. Meeting adjourned.
Open for,
Oh, I didn't have that on my list. Open for public comment. I wish there is that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can't wait till the next day.